This channel does not promote or encourage any illegal activities. All contents provided by this channel is meant for educational purpose only.
Since the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School.
In February 14, 2018, Valentine's Day, a day meant for love and joy became one of the darkest days in American history. At Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, the sound of gunfire shattered the afternoon silence. Before we get into the tragic events of February 14, 2018, let me tell you a little about the shooter, Nikolas Cruz. Who was he? What led him down this dark path? And could this attack have been prevented? Nikolas Jacob Cruz was born on September 24, 1998, in Margate, Florida. Almost immediately, his life took a difficult turn. He and his biological brother, Zachary, were adopted as infants by Linda and Roger Cruz, a couple living in Parkland, Florida. From the outside, it seemed like a stable home. But inside, things were far from perfect. From a young age, Cruz showed signs of severe emotional and behavioral issues. According to reports, he struggled with outbursts of anger, social isolation, and learning disabilities. Teachers and caregivers noted that he had trouble making friends, frequently displayed aggressive tendencies, and had difficulty coping with frustration. As he grew older, these issues became more pronounced. Cruz was diagnosed with developmental delays and later attended a school for children with emotional and behavioral disorders before transferring to Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. One of the most concerning aspects of Cruz's life was his obsession with violence. He had a long history of making disturbing threats, harming small animals, and displaying a fascination with guns. These warning signs were there for years, yet no one took significant action to stop him. At school, he was frequently in trouble. He had multiple suspensions for fighting, making threats, and bringing bullets to class. Teachers and students reported him to the administration several times, labeling him as a danger. One classmate even said, if anyone was going to shoot up the school, it would be him. Yet despite these warnings, little was done to intervene. Cruz's downward spiral accelerated in 2017 when tragedy struck. His adoptive father had passed away years earlier, but now his mother, Linda Cruz, the only parental figure he had left, died suddenly from pneumonia. Devastated, Cruz and his brother were left without a home. Without his mother, Cruz became even more unstable. He was briefly taken in by a friend's family, but his erratic behavior, obsessively collecting guns, posting disturbing messages on social media, made them uneasy. He continued to purchase firearms legally, despite his history of mental health struggles. And by early 2018, he had made his decision. He would return to Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, not as a student, but as a killer. On the morning of February 14, 2018, Cruz woke up at the home of the family that had taken him in. He left the house carrying a duffel bag and a backpack. Inside was the AR-15 rifle and several magazines of ammunition. He took an Uber to Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. The driver, unaware of his intentions, later recalled that Cruz seemed nervous, but didn't say much. She dropped him off at 2:19 p.m. As he approached the campus, carrying his weapon bag, he walked toward the freshman building. He knew the layout well. He had studied it. He had planned everything. Cruz entered the school and pulled the fire alarm, a strategic move to get as many students as possible into the hallways. And at that moment, the nightmare began. What happened next would change Parkland and America forever. In just 6 minutes, 17 lives were stolen. The attack was swift, brutal, and left a lasting scar on the nation. It was 2:19 p.m. when Nikolas Cruz stepped onto the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School campus, carrying an AR-15 rifle inside a black duffel bag. The students, unaware of the looming danger, continued with their day as usual. But when the fire alarm went off, confusion spread throughout the school. Some students thought it was another routine drill. Others felt something was off. As the alarm rang, Cruz made his way into Building 12, the freshman building, one of the most populated areas on campus at that time. Standing near the east stairwell, he pulled out his weapon, loaded it, and without hesitation, started firing. Bang, bang, bang. The first shots tore through the hallways. Bullets struck windows, lockers, and walls as students scrambled for cover. Within seconds, the screams of terror echoed through the corridors. Cruz moved methodically, aiming at anyone in sight. His first victims were students standing near the stairwell, some hit before they could react, others collapsing as they tried to run. Within moments, classrooms turned into battlegrounds. Amid the chaos, several teachers and staff members made heroic efforts to protect their students. Scott Bagel, a geography teacher, saw students running in panic. Instead of saving himself, he unlocked his classroom door and ushered students inside, shielding them from gunfire. But before he could lock the door behind him, he was shot and killed. He wasn't the only one who made the ultimate sacrifice. Aaron Face, a beloved football coach, ran toward the gunfire, using his body to shield students from bullets. He died a hero. In just over 2 minutes, Cruz had shot multiple students and teachers. The fire alarm, now mixed with screams and the sound of gunfire, added to the confusion. Some students ran into the halls, believing it was a real fire. Others crouched under desks, whispering prayers, sending desperate text messages to their families. One student later recalled, "It felt like we were waiting to die. The shots kept coming closer. I didn't know if I would ever see my parents again." With police on their way, Cruz made his way to the second floor. For unknown reasons, he didn't fire on this level, instead heading to the third floor, where more students had been trapped by his tactical maneuver, pulling the fire alarm. In room 1256, senior Anthony Borges took 5 bullets as he used his body to block the door, shielding his classmates from the attack. Miraculously, he survived. As the massacre unfolded, some students managed to record videos on their phones. Clips later surfaced showing terrified teenagers hiding behind desks, sobbing as gunshots rang out just outside their classrooms. At 2:22 p.m., the first officers arrived on the scene. But in a controversial decision, school resource officer Scott Peterson, who was armed and stationed at the school, did not enter the building. Instead, he remained outside for over 45 minutes while the massacre continued. This failure to engage the shooter sparked outrage. Families of the victims accused him of cowardice, and he was later arrested and charged with neglect of duty.
More than 100 gunshots were fired Friday to reenact the 2018 Parkland, Florida mass shooting. The live ammunition reenactment is part of a civil lawsuit against a former sheriff deputy who parents say failed to protect the victims of the attack.
At 2:27 p.m., just 6 minutes after the attack began, Cruz stopped firing. He dropped his weapon and fled the building, blending in with students evacuating the campus. He walked out unnoticed. While the school remained in lockdown and SWAT teams cleared rooms, Cruz casually made his way to a nearby Walmart, then to a McDonald's where he sat for several minutes. The horrifying attack was over, but the nightmare for Parkland was just beginning.
Students and faculty had little time to react. Those who escaped the initial onslaught of gunfire ran for cover and reached out to loved ones. Caitlin Carbachi was at work yesterday when her younger sister, Hannah, texted in a panic. "Caitlin, there is a shooter on campus. I am not joking. Call 911, please." "Hannah, what? Are you serious? Run." "Caitlin, I am not joking. They just shot through the walls. Someone in my class is injured. I am not joking. Call mom and dad." The next message was to her parents, in case she did not make it. "I'm so scared, Caitlin. Tell them I love them so much. I know, Hannah, you're gonna be fine." Moments later, she texted about a wounded classmate. "They got shot like 8 minutes ago when the shooting started. How many shots did you hear?" "A lot." It happened in a first-floor classroom. Hannah survived, and so did Samantha Grady, a junior who was grazed by a bullet while hiding in the same classroom. This morning, they received the terrible news about their injured classmate.
Unfortunately, she didn't make it.
Some who survived hid behind chairs in the auditorium or in closets. Many tried to keep as quiet as possible, all while texting emergency messages.
I'm with one of the parents right now outside here. He's saying that he's getting texted from his child. He says, "Help me, they're fighting with him right now."
"There's a shooting at school. I'm fine, but I'm terrified. Please call police." That's the frightening message Lizette Rosenblatt received from her daughter, Alexandra, a sophomore. "Tell them someone is hurt on the 3rd floor. We can hear him crying and praying. I love you. Everything is going to be okay. Where are you now?" "I'm hiding." "What floor, baby?" "3rd floor."
There was 20, 30 minutes that I had lost contact with her. And those 20, 30 minutes, I lost it. I was hysterical.
Rosenblatt's daughter survived. She, like so many from the school, will carry the pain of what has happened. Kira Perro, a student, tweeted, "Wishing yesterday was some type of sick dream. I'm sick to my stomach. I pray for guidance." Then she wrote, "I want my friends back." Jason Carroll, CNN, New York.
Less than an hour after the deadly shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, law enforcement officials were in a frantic race against time to locate the suspect. Hundreds of officers were combing through the streets of Parkland, unsure if the gunman was still armed and dangerous. But while the community remained in chaos, Nikolas Cruz was walking through a quiet neighborhood, blending in as if nothing had happened. After leaving the school, Cruz made his way to a nearby Walmart, entered the store, and casually purchased a soda at the subway inside. Surveillance cameras captured him walking through the aisles, his demeanor eerily calm for someone who had just committed one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. He then left Walmart and headed toward a McDonald's, where he sat at a booth across from a student who had just survived the attack. The student later recalled that Cruz sat there in silence, staring down at his food, emotionless. But Cruz's escape wouldn't last much longer. A witness who saw him walking through a residential area recognized his face from school and quickly called the police. At approximately 3:41 p.m., just over an hour after the massacre, Officer Michael Leonard of the Coconut Creek Police Department spotted Cruz near the 4,700 block of Wyndham Lakes Drive. He was walking aimlessly when Leonard and other officers surrounded him, guns drawn. Despite the horrific crime he had just committed, Cruz did not resist. He followed commands, got on the ground, and was placed in handcuffs without a fight. His face was expressionless, his body language eerily passive. After his arrest, Cruz was taken to the Broward County Sheriff's Office for questioning. During his interrogation, he appeared surprisingly cooperative, even offering chilling details about his motive. When asked why he carried out the attack, Cruz simply said, "I don't know. I just had to do it." He admitted that he had been hearing voices in his head telling him to hurt people. Whether this was a genuine mental illness or an excuse to avoid the death penalty remains up for debate. Cruz confessed to everything. He described how he had planned the attack for months, how he chose Valentine's Day on purpose, knowing that more students would be present. He explained how he studied the school's layout, intentionally pulled the fire alarm to draw students into the halls, and methodically moved through the building, shooting as many people as possible. At one point, he even apologized to the officers questioning him, saying, "I'm sorry for what I did." But by then, it was far too late for remorse. 17 people were dead. 17 families had been shattered forever. While Cruz sat in custody, the community of Parkland was reeling from the devastation. Parents desperately tried to locate their children, hoping they had survived. Hospitals were flooded with injured students. And as the full scope of the tragedy unfolded, the entire nation watched in shock. The images were heartbreaking. Teens crying as they ran from the school, frantic parents outside the campus waiting for news, and stories of unimaginable bravery, students and teachers who sacrificed themselves to save others. Within days, Cruz was officially charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. Prosecutors immediately announced that they would seek the death penalty, but his defense team argued that Cruz suffered from severe mental health issues and should instead receive life in prison without parole. The trial sparked intense debate. Should the shooter be executed for his crimes, or should his mental state be taken into account? Victims' families were divided. Some wanted him to pay with his life, while others simply wanted him locked away forever.
I don't really feel anything yet. I haven't cried yet.
Sam Fuentes has a story that's tragically both normal and unique in America. Normal in that she is a survivor of a school shooting. Unique in that she had the chance to confront her shooter in court.
When you can single-handedly stare your friend's killer in the face and tell them exactly how it happened, when it happened, and not be faced by that.
When I was shot and I lost my friends, I lost so much in that shooting. I lost my sense of safety, much of my autonomy, my mobility. So much of my own control was taken away from me. So in many ways, confronting my shooter was sort of a path to gaining some control back. I really hope that Death by Numbers, connects to people who are still reckoning with their own trauma.
In the film, you often cross out the killer. I assume when it comes to crossing out the killer, it's about the fact that these people become martyrs to these evil causes.
Well, there's a movement called no notoriety in general, where victim communities are really trying to implore media not to use the name and the image of the shooter because there is so much evidence of this copycat. So we wanted very much in Death by Numbers to interweave the horror of the courtroom, the reality, but the idea of crossing out his face through her marker, her journaling, so to speak. And then together we made a decision that he should be revealed at the end only when Sam stares him down for the first time and has the courage to look him in the eye.
The people that you kill will have a legacy much more important than you. And the people who nearly killed will live their lives, though with much difficulty, with a compassion and a dignity in ways you will only dream.
In the aftermath of the Parkland shooting, the students started a mass movement for gun control, marching on the Florida state capital, Tallahassee, as well as Washington, D.C.
The tragedy at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School wasn't just another mass shooting. This time something was different. Survivors weren't just grieving, they were angry, and they weren't going to stay silent.
Part of me that has become enraged, like so many Americans. Just the scourge of gun violence being the #1 killer of youth in our country is an outrage. We owe our youth more. I get emotional every time I speak of it, because I think the general public, it's become normalized.
Do you feel that there is still a momentum there with your movement, or do you feel that that's unfortunately ebbed away?
Something I struggle with quite a bit, right? It's really disheartening, right? Because I've been working within the gun violence prevention space since I was a victim of gun violence in the first place. There are epic highs and there are epic lows. I won't give up until I know that nobody has to go through what I had to go through.
I don't know. The new US president is not in favor of gun control and has already reportedly closed the Office of Gun Violence Prevention.
How are we doing, fellow Democrats?
But David Hogg, another Parkland student, was just elected vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, the new official opposition. Sam, you were talking about the up and down nature of your work and your advocacy. It seems at the moment you have President Trump back in the White House. On the other hand, you have someone like your schoolmate David Hogg, who's now a vice chair of the DNC. How hopeful are you of your cause at the moment?
Hope is obligatory, I feel, but mostly because I have a legacy to uphold. I have people that I care deeply about that I'd like to see get better, even if it's not the most convenient feeling to have at times. It's the only thing that moves me forward.
Sam Puentes, Kim Snyder, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The penalty phase of the Parkland shooter's trial entering its third week. It's been another emotional day in court as jurors learn the graphic details about 3 of the victims' deaths. Local 10's Christina Vasquez joins us live outside the courtroom with more. Christina.
Since trial testimony began, today may have been some of the most difficult testimony. So a warning to you tonight that what you're about to hear is disturbing and graphic.
Inner side of the skull and the brain.
This testimony on how the high-velocity bullets the Parkland shooter fired from his AR-15 style rifle wreaked damage to tissue, organs, and bones, and murder victims Coach Aaron Feist.
One of the ribs was fractured by the bullet.
Luke Hoyer.
Under the jawline of Mr. Hoyer's neck.
And Joaquin Oliver.
Basically caused an explosion inside of the skull.
Was difficult and devastating.
Mr. Oliver's head was only kept together by his scalp and forehead.
One of the jurors taking a deep breath, others turning to view family members of the murdered quietly weeping in the courtroom.
It led to about 1.5 liters of blood to be trapped in the right chest cavity.
Dr. Terrell Top says Luke's lungs were drowning in blood, and the pathway of the bullet through the gunshot wound to his neck indicates
probably shot at while he was in the process of hitting the ground, or he may have been kneeling.
And perhaps one of the most graphic descriptions to date.
The bullet had so much force.
About the bullet which shot through Joaquin's hand.
He was like in this orientation, trying to protect himself from being harmed.
And then into his left temple.
That it was like a cherry bomb that was inside of one's head, and it just caused the skull to explode and the brain with it.
This is the Stoneman Douglas bell schedule.
Downloaded to the Parkland shooter's cell phone about 12 days before the shooting, testified BSO Detective Ronald Faircloth, who also told jurors days before the shooting.
A Google search was conducted for school shooters.
The fight for justice isn't over. The debate on gun control rages on. And for the victims of Parkland, their families, and the survivors who refuse to be silenced, their message remains the same: never again.